The invasion that changed World War II began on June the 22nd, 1941, when 3.8 million German troops stormed east across the border into the Soviet Union as part of Operation Barbarossa. It was a campaign so huge that to attempt to comprehend it, historians have reduced it to large, sweeping arrows crossing back and forth across the battlefields. As a historical researcher and documentary maker, I wanted to go beyond the grand narrative of clashing army groups. I wanted to see this cataclysmic event through the lens of a single division. I've spent months digging through Soviet and German archives for this YouTube series, and what I've uncovered is more compelling than typical Eastern Front content. I found the war diaries of the German 291st Infantry Division, and they reveal details about Barbarossa's opening days that will completely reshape how you see the invasion. The 291st Infantry Division was officially formed on February the 7th, 1940, in Military District No. 1, which encompassed the province of East Prussia. After serving as an occupation force in France and Belgium following the 1940 campaign, the division was shifted back east to its homeland in early 1941 to assemble as part of Army Group North in preparation for Operation Barbarossa. The division was built around three core infantry regiments, the 504th, the 505th and the 506th. Each regiment numbered approximately 3,100 personnel, and alongside divisional support units and the attached artillery regiment, it had a fighting strength of 16,300 men. But where exactly along the vast front line did the German High Command intend to deploy the 291st? Throughout this series, I'll be drawing on a remarkable document from the German archives called The Campaign Against Soviet Russia. This was an atlas of the campaign compiled by the German General Staff in 1942, and it now resides in the US Library of Congress. Consulting the map dated the 21st of June 1941, we can see that the 291st held the distinction of being the northernmost division along the entire front line. To their right flanks stood the men of the 61st Infantry Division, who together with the 217th Infantry Division formed the offensive strength of the 18th Army, commanded by Generaloberst Georg von Kuchler. By turning to the war diary of the 291st, we can see that 2 days before the invasion, the division received notice of its intended targets.
The 291st Infantry Division, directly subordinate to the 18th Army, will break through the enemy border zone from its deployment position in the Eglishken-Girngallen line and capture the area around Darbaine, in order to advance from there towards Libau. It will break through the enemy defensive line between Krottingen and Kjolaikai, concentrating the bulk of its forces on the west bank of the Tenza River and advancing with elements on the east bank. If the division finds itself fighting a vastly superior enemy and is unable to reach its objective in Libau, it is to tie down the enemy by repeatedly launching new attacks.
But why was Libau such a critical objective? For the German 291st Infantry Division, neutralising the Soviet forces in this sector was a strategic necessity. As a major Soviet port positioned directly on the flank of the German advance, Libau posed a threat that had to be eliminated immediately. Hitler had anticipated this in his 1940 Directive 21, which outlined the strategy for Operation Barbarossa. In it, he stated that the Russian army was to be shattered by deep armoured thrusts, systematically depriving the Baltic fleet of its bases and neutralising its combat capability. By seizing Libau, Army Group North would secure a vital supply hub, a stepping stone essential for sustaining the momentum of the drive towards Riga and Leningrad. The war diary entries from the days leading up to Operation Barbarossa offer a fascinating glimpse into the pre-invasion friction. While historical consensus often suggests German intelligence on Soviet forces was precise, these records tell a different story entirely. Far from being a settled matter, the diaries reveal significant uncertainty regarding the location of the Soviet main defensive lines and the specific units being faced. The German diary indicates the belief that they faced men of the 42nd Rifle Division, the 67th Rifle Division, alongside other unknown rifle divisions, and the 6th Tank Brigade. Now let's check the actual Soviet archives and see what the Germans would have to defeat if their attack was to be successful. The Soviet 8th Army shouldered the defence of the northwestern front, stretching its 10th Rifle Corps across 90 kilometres of frontier from the Baltic Sea to the marshes near Torgay. On the far right, the 10th Rifle Division sat directly in the path of the German 291st Division. Their lines ran from Palanga to Shvechnya, a distance of nearly 60 kilometres. In an era where a division was meant to hold just 8 to 12 kilometres, the 10th was dangerously overstretched. They weren't a wall, but a fragile screen, a tripwire waiting for the first blow. At 12:30 hours on June the 21st, 1940, the code word for Operation Barbarossa, Dusseldorf, was officially broadcast. Within 10 minutes, the 504th, the 505th and the 506th Infantry Regiments of the 291st Infantry Division were alerted to their imminent deployment. By 1500 hours, the regiment received orders to advance towards Dargajai and assemble under the cover of the local forests. The strategic objectives were clearly defined. The 504th was tasked with clearing the eastern bank of the Tenza River to capture Krotingen. The 505th was to drive through the centre towards Darbeni, and the 506th was assigned to neutralise a stronghold at Palanga before pushing north along the coast. Once these actions had been carried out, the units would then advance on its main objective of Libau. The invasion was scheduled for 3:15 AM on the morning of the 22nd. However, the divisional war diaries record a critical update from General Major Karl Heinrich Böttcher mere minutes before the assault was to begin. As Artillery Commander 104, Böttcher was tasked with synchronising the 291st Artillery Regiment fire support for the mobile units spearheading the attack. He reported a major tactical complication.
The ground fog is so dense that the light artillery cannot support the advance. The heavy artillery, however, will still fire on pre-planned targets.
Regardless of the poor visibility, the heavy batteries opened fire at 3:05 AM. A deep, rhythmic thunder rolled across the front, and the horizon ignited with the glow of the first strikes. Sheltered within the tree lines, thousands of German soldiers crouched in anticipation. Many muttered final prayers or pressed a lingering kiss to photographs of loved ones before hauling themselves up to begin the long trek forward. A scene echoed by millions of men from the Baltic Sea in the north down to the Black Sea in the south, a front line that stretched over 1,800 miles. Within minutes, reports began filtering back to the divisional commander, Generalleutnant Kurt Herzog. The first arrived from the 505th Infantry Regiment. Attack proceeding as planned, no visibility. 15 minutes later, a second update arrived from the 504th. Attack proceeding as planned, no visibility. It is difficult to overstate the psychological toll of those opening moments. Advancing blindly into enemy territory, with zero visibility and stripped of the light artillery support they had hoped to rely upon for cover. But if things were bad for the Germans, they were infinitely worse for the Soviets. The commander of the Soviet 10th Rifle Division later recalled the ominous atmosphere, noting that the sound of engines could be heard vibrating all along the border before the roar of heavy artillery shells landing drowned them out. By 3:36 AM, the 505th and the 506th Regiments had crossed no man's land, utilising the thick morning fog to mask their approach. Soviet border outposts attempted to respond, but their resistance was limited to sporadic isolated rifle fire as the German columns pressed forward through the mist. By 4 AM, the 506th reported that they had overrun and destroyed the initial Soviet defensive line. luck favoured the attackers. When they reached the river leading to Palanga, the bridge had not been demolished, allowing the German units to bypass this treacherous marshy area that would have otherwise stalled their vehicles. In the distance, Palanga began to burn due to the pre-planned heavy artillery bombardment. The Soviet response remained fragmented, with only a single artillery round landing near the advancing troops. To the flank, the 505th reported an eerie quiet as their reconnaissance units pushed deeper into Soviet territory. The German schedule remained brutally efficient. By 4:20 am, the 505th had occupied the road in front of Prishmanche, while the 504th moved all elements in a heavy push towards Krottingen. As the first dawn of Operation Barbarossa broke, the fog, which had initially threatened to hinder German artillery, proved to be a non-factor because the defence had already been overwhelmed. Capitalising on the collapse of the border crust, the 506th prepared to assault Palanga from the north. To trap the remaining defenders, they organised a pincer movement. Panzerjäger 291 would push up from the south, supported by a bicycle battalion equipped with mine detectors to clear the way for the heavier armour. While the 505th established a command post at Prishmanche, their patrols began scouring the woods towards Rodice, hunting for any Soviet units attempting to regroup in the aftermath of the initial onslaught. By shifting the lens to the 18th Army's daily war diary, the early dispatches suggest an effortless start to the invasion. General Lieutenant Herzog, commanding the 291st Division, characterised the opposition as consistently weak. He further observed that a dense morning fog had provided the perfect tactical shroud, enabling his units to advance on Krottingen with virtually no interference. In reality, the Soviet defenders at the frontier were merely forward border guard units, isolated groups of men hunkered down in foxholes, timber bunkers and basic trenches. Outmatched and armed with little more than rifles and grenades, these small detachments were quickly overwhelmed or forced to retreat under the weight of the German onslaught. The real test would come as the Soviets woke up to the fact that they were now at war with Germany.